All right, welcome back. We are going to continue on here to video number 2 in this educational series on long-term care planning and insurance. So far, you've watched the video on longevity, and hopefully that was helpful for you. And now we're going to talk about really what long-term care is versus what people might think it is. And again, I'm your host here, Michael Fitzpatrick, president and co-founder of the LTC Partnership. I've been specializing in long-term care planning and insurance for over 10 years now. And we're going to get right into the issue of what long-term care is. I'm going to call this LTC Education 101, trying to make the complex very easy. So just by definition alone, what is long-term care? Well, really it's assistance, which is help, that's provided to someone who has a condition, an illness, or a cognitive impairment that limits their ability to perform normal day-to-day activities of daily living. So you might ask yourself, what are these activities of daily living? And this definition, to break it down really simply, it's just helping somebody because something else happened to them, either physically or mentally or and so on, and they can no longer take care of themselves. So a lot of the verbiage deals with this issue of ADLs, activities of daily living. And there's actually 6 things that we do each and every day on our own, and if you can do these things, you're considered to be independent. Now, if you lose the ability to perform any 2 out of these 6 activities of daily living, you now need what's referred to as long-term custodial care. So bathing, eating, getting dressed, toileting, transferring, which means moving from spot to spot, bed to chair or couch to bed, and then continence, maintaining your bowels. If you can't perform any 2 out of those, then you now need custodial care. And in a separate category unto itself is maybe you can do all those things physically, but mentally you just can't be left alone from a safety perspective. So a cognitive impairment, like Katharine Hepburn and Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II and Michael J. Fox, this is when people require substantial supervision. And I could probably take these 4 pictures out, and you could probably put pictures in there of people that you know and family members as well. So basically, your doctor has to certify that your condition, either physically or cognitively, will last for at least 90 days in order for it to be classified and considered long-term care. If I broke both my arms, my doctor probably would tell me I'll get better in 6 to 8 weeks, so therefore that was never considered to be long-term care. That's the certification, just as an FYI, so we're all on the same page with that. Now, if you were to break down the different levels of care that people require once they need long-term care, you'll notice that it's rather disproportionate. But some people require skilled care, and you can see it's about half of 1%. So of the 15 million people who need care right now in our country who need long-term care, only about half of 1% of their needs, day in and day out, are in this category called skilled care. And skilled care is basically open heart surgeries or bone marrow transplants or hip replacements. It's very, very acute, very skilled, typically done by a surgeon, a doctor, a physician in a hospital setting or some sort of a facility. Now, intermediate care is also part of long-term care, but you can see it's just not a real big part. Now, intermediate care is otherwise known as physical therapy and rehab. So it is part of long-term care, but just not a big piece of the pie. Custodial care is really what long-term care consists of. So then what is custodial care? Well, just bring it back a few slides. Custodial care, quite simply, is helping people with activities of daily living or supervising somebody with a cognitive impairment. Now, why is this chart important to point out? Well, because when you look at traditional health insurance, you'll notice that we are covered the most in the area that has the least to do with long-term care. So for example, when it comes to skilled care, your health insurance typically covers you for up to the first 100 days, and then after that, you're not covered. And then for intermediate care, depending on what your policy says, but generally you're covered for 45 to 60 days per occurrence per year for physical therapy and rehab and so on, and then after that, you're not covered. And then for custodial care, which is really the essence of what long-term care is, it's not a covered service. So it's not like health insurance does a poor job paying for long-term care insurance. It just doesn't do any job. In fact, it wasn't designed initially to handle the issues of longevity. Then you turn into Medicare. Well, Medicare is pretty much like an extension of health insurance, but for retirees. Now, you get Medicare, underline the last 4 letters of that word, care, medical care, on your 65th birthday and beyond. As long as you paid into the system for 10 years, which is 40 quarters, They take 1.45% of every paycheck you've ever made, and it goes into this bucket called Medicare, so that you can actually have health insurance protection as a retiree. Well, the very bottom here, it tells you that Medicare does not pay for custodial care. It is designed to help you pay for skilled care, intermediate care, hospitalizations, surgeries, procedures, and so on. But if you don't believe me, here's a print off of a Social Security statement that goes out to everybody 3 months before their birthday every single year. And you can see down here, it basically says verbatim, Medicare does not pay for long-term care, so you might want to consider options for private insurance. And what's alarming is that most people don't really read this document on the 4th page in the top left-hand paragraph. So it's really my job to kind of bring this information to people like yourself. And now that you know this, it's really kind of hard to not know it. So they're telling you on your Social Security statement that this is not going to cover this. You may want to consider options for private insurance. But when surveyed, a lot of people still think that Medicare will pay for long-term care. Now, when you understand long-term care, it's important to understand the average length of a claim and some of the average costs. Well, what do I mean by that? There are different places that people actually receive long-term care services, from their home or assisted living or nursing homes, etc., etc., etc. So long-term care claims are not just for nursing homes. In fact, somebody, generally speaking, may not even make it to a nursing home. When you talk about a long-term care claim, what it really means is from when the person first started needing care, which was probably at home, to when they actually passed away, everything in between was a claim. So women on average need care for about 5.5 years, and men for a little over 4 years. Now, when we actually look at the average costs of care, this is just in today's dollars, and these costs vary across the country, state by state. But I'll just give you an example, very generally speaking. For home care, you're talking roughly around $20 per hour. So if you had somebody coming in for half a day over the course of a year, you're talking somewhere around $87,000 of out-of-pocket money to have home care. Then you have assisted living facilities. This is just kind of the raw cost, the actual cost of room and board. This cost could go up a little bit more depending on your care needs. Then you have adult daycare, which is where you drop somebody off and pick them up. And then you have nursing homes. And actually another group that's in here that's not mentioned is continuing care retirement communities, CCRCs. That's a whole different conversation for a different day. But I guess basically what I'm trying to say here is that the average cost of care for long-term care is going to be somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 per year. Unfortunately, we also know that the average costs have been increasing by between 4 and 5% every year for the past 30 years. Now at that rate, here's kind of a visual of what that looks like. If you needed care today, and you needed the average of 4 years of care at $200 per day, you're talking somewhere around $292,000 to pay for care if it were to happen right now. Let's just say for argument's sake, though, it didn't happen today, and it happened in 15 years. Well, that same care is going to cost closer to $400 per day, and so if you just still needed 4 years worth of care, you're talking about almost $600,000 out of pocket to pay for your long-term care needs 15 years from today. And what if it wasn't 15 years from now? What if it was 25 years from now? Well, with inflation alone, the same care, same type of care, is not going to cost $400 per day. It's not going to cost $200 per day. It's going to cost $800 per day. And I know that looks on paper, that looks outrageous, but keep in mind that colleges didn't always cost $50,000 a year. Gasoline didn't always cost what it costs. Postage didn't always cost what it costs. Milk didn't always cost what it costs. So everything changes with inflation. And I'm just telling you right now that if you're the kind of person who's in their 50s or early 60s and you're thinking about when you may need care, it could be tomorrow, as we all know, but generally speaking, if it's 20, 25, 30 years from now, this is the kind of out-of-pocket expense that people are coming up with. So anyway, this concludes the second session of the video series here. We've gone through longevity. We've gone through really what long-term care is, so I think you have a better grasp on that. Now we're going to talk about your options and then also show you how to customize a policy, a long-term care insurance policy. And the last thing I'm going to share with you, like I said before, something that nobody's helping people with and giving away for free, and that is giving you an idea of the costs. I'm going to show you the proposal software, exactly how this thing works, and bring you kind of on the inside of this business. So anyway, thanks so much for staying with us here. Hope this video was helpful and tutorial, and we'll see you on video 3. Take care.